Well, we knew that this offseason for the New York Rangers was going to be a complete teardown. And 2 days after the season ends, New York has parted ways with head coach Peter Laviolette and associate head coach Phil Housley. Chris Drury and the Rangers announced that on Saturday morning. Welcome back, everyone, to the Blue Line Report, episode 3. As a train goes by my apartment, I'm Jake Mazarski here with Jenny Streeter. As always, Jenny's in bed because she's been really busy with breaking the news about Laviolette being fired for Fansided. So I'm going to turn it over to her. Let her summarize her day. I think we all knew this was coming, but on a Saturday, didn't have to be. So, Jenny, how are we feeling?
Yeah, thanks, Jake. Hi, Blue Shirt fans. Welcome back to episode 3, like Jake said, of the Blue Line Report. As you can see by my background, I'm recording from my bedroom today because late last night I was up prepping, via some sourcing that, I knew the Laviolette news was coming this Saturday. So when I went to bed and woke up late, the news dropped and I was able to get that story up ASAP. Shout out to me. We beat ESPN, which that's like one of the first times in my career that has happened. So that was super cool. But yeah, obviously, as Jake says, as we know, in one of their first moves, now that the season is officially over, the New York Rangers have let head coach Peter Laviolette go. This was after he posted a 94, 59, and 11 overall record in his second season on the job. In his contract, he had exactly 1 year remaining. As Jake said, him and associate head coach Phil have since been terminated. Laviolette was originally undrafted by teams in the NHL. He was a former defenseman who played a total of 12 games with the Rangers himself as a blue shirt in the 1988 to 1989 season. He also played for the US in the Olympics twice in both 1988 and 1994. As everyone who's been keeping up with our podcast and BlueLineStation.com know, the Rangers began the season with a promising 12-4-1 start, but since spiraled to missing the postseason the very next year after winning the President's Trophy and a disastrous 4-15-0 record tallied in November and December under Laviolette's charge. So I think, Jake and I and all Blue Shirt fans, this was something that Blue Shirt fans were hoping was going to happen. And this was something that, reporters like Jake and myself knew was going to happen. But yeah, definitely not a shortage of things to discuss in episode 3, as I'm sure Jake can agree.
Yeah, there's definitely not a shortage. And I said on the last episode, I'm not going to say I predicted it because everybody knew it was coming, that the Rangers were going to fire Laviolette the day after the season ended. They just chose to wait an extra day, probably because James Dolan was prepping for a Knicks playoff game today, which is in a few hours. Yeah, so when you look at all the problems that the New York Rangers have this year, you could throw out anything, and I think the most common answer is everything because there was a problem in every asset of the New York Rangers. The one non-negotiable was their coaching because Peter Laviolette, because Phil Housley, because the rest of the coaching staff, just the bottom line, the players were not prepared and they didn't make adjustments in game. Remember, we're talking about a Rangers team that won the President's Trophy in 23-24, set franchise records in wins and points, and was 2 wins away from the Stanley Cup final. And then you add on the fact that they led the league in comeback wins with 28. This season, the Rangers only had one multi-goal comeback win. And that was against Florida when New York was already eliminated. And just think of all these losses. I'm going to read off like 15 losses right now very fast.
All right, let's hear it.
November 7th, 6-1 to the Sabres. November 23rd, 6-2 to the Oilers. Then Chris Drury sent the memo, and we'll talk about that. A few days later, November 29th, 3-1 to the Flyers. December 9th, 2-1 to the Blackhawks, who were last place in the league. Then, December 17th, nearly a week later, 2-0 to the Predators, who were last place in the league. The Rangers were the only team in the league this year to lose to back-to-back teams that were in last place. They lost to the Devils twice, 4-0 and 5-0 at the Prudential Center. The Avalanche led in the third period in both of those games, only got 1 point out of it. Dallas up 3-0, lost 5-4 in overtime. You get the bottom line. The other two I'm going to throw out here right now is Montreal at Montreal when the Rangers were leading 4 different times in the game and lost in overtime on a Patrick Laine goal. And Ottawa when the Rangers were up 3-1 in the third, lost in overtime on a Brady Tkachuk goal. And all that tallied up. And there you have to look at coaching because these players did not make those in-game adjustments. And I mean, you could agree with me. A lot of the times, they just didn't look like they wanted to be there. Like, bottom
Yeah,
line.
I think that's definitely something that, I included in my article where I broke the fact that, look, Laviolette got fired. It really just seems like, especially after the disastrous November and December stretch that you and I both mentioned, that a lot of the team just seemingly checked out. And Laviolette himself seemed like he checked out too. There was that now infamous quote where he came out and said, like, yeah, I don't even go in the locker room after a loss. Like it just seems like the blue shirts on the roster didn't want to play for this guy anymore, and it seems like like LaViolette himself just wasn't bought in anymore.
Absolutely. And I think this goes all the way back to the summer when Barclay Goodrow was shipped off to San Jose. They took on all of Goodrow's salary. It was the first move Chris Drury made. And it was the first move where the cracks started showing for the Rangers. Now, I don't think anybody who covered the team thought Goodrow was going to return after last season. He was a $3.6 million salary cap hit. That's a lot for a fourth liner. But it did break the locker room a little. And then you go to preseason media day that we were covering, Jacob Trouba. Everybody knows this is our last shot. And then the cracks start showing, and just like every NHL team in sports, losing has an effect on you. And you saw that over and over again. And where Peter Laviolette stands in this, look, this guy is one of the winningest coaches of all time. He's number 7 or 8 all time in wins. He won a Stanley Cup with Carolina in 2006. He made the Stanley Cup with Philadelphia. And he's always had this track record of, in his first year with the team, he gets them to be a lot better. I'm not saying that's the only reason the Rangers were really good last year and we could put up a bunch, but this year they looked very unmotivated. From Goodrow getting traded to Jacob Trouba getting traded. Jacob Trouba, $8.5 million cap hit, traded to Anaheim. The Rangers did not have leadership. To rumors about Chris Kreider and others just not being motivated and I'm not going to use quitting on the team because I don't think that's true at all. But there were clearly cracks. And Laviolette, if you're one of the winningest coaches of all time, you're expected to fix it, right? And he just didn't. He just didn't.
Yeah, no, completely agree with that. I do want to segue into Drury's press conference today,
Yeah.
which was super interesting. We did not learn a lot, but we got a lot of quotes. So, I do want to get into it that at the very start of this press conference, after the news dropped that LaViolette was fired, Drury did acknowledge that he knows the fan base is frustrated, and he acknowledged that they're frustrated for good reasons. He said, "We know our fans are frustrated, and they deserve a better season than this. Period. It starts with me. I need to do a better job and give the staff and players the opportunity to succeed." So I think that was a really good way for Chris to start out the press conference. I really liked that he like jumped right in there and said like, "Hey, this is what's going on, and I know that this is how people are feeling," and acknowledged that and also took some responsibility.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think Chris Drury handled the press conference really well. I don't think there were a lot of questions about his job because of his relationship with James Dolan, because of the fact that I'll talk about Chris Drury and the moves he made in 1 second, but acknowledging Ranger fans because that's the number one thing. The Rangers let down not only themselves, they let down one of the best fan bases in hockey. And New York was a team that is known for playoff hockey. Stanley Cup playoffs start today. Where are the Rangers, right?
Yeah, I
And
do.
Chris
Before
Drury,
you get into
oh,
that,
sorry,
let me just go ahead and read that full quote just so our listeners
go
can
for it.
get a sense of what's going on. So he said, "Leading into the season, given the success we had the last few years, we had high expectations. Quite simply, we fell short across the board. Nobody here takes it lightly. We know our fans are frustrated and they deserve a better season than this. It starts with me. I need to do a better job and give the staff and players the opportunity to succeed. And while ultimately I made the decision, a new voice was needed behind the bench. Everyone here, players, management, staff, need to take ownership of this season, and we will be having direct, honest conversations during exit meetings on Monday about what our expectations are for the summer and moving forward, getting ready for next season." So honestly, that was his entire opening remark. And while we did kind of get into, new head coach speculations and talking about the culture and specific decisions, like I really think he kind of said everything that he needed to say in his opening remark. Thought it was very well worded.
I think every word in it was said perfectly because he didn't put accountability only on himself, but he
Mhm.
did put accountability on himself. He put accountability on everyone else. And Drury was pretty much following what reporters like Emily Kaplan for ESPN, Elliot Friedman for Sportsnet, these guys, there are going to be a lot of difficult conversations had. And Chris Drury knows that. He's seen the writing on the wall for a while. And the second New York started losing, and you go, this isn't a team that's going to win the Stanley Cup. he did a very good job just addressing it, bottom line, because everybody knows that the Rangers are a disappointment, right? And I think Chris Drury this season actually made some moves that will help the Rangers down the line. And he was trying. I'm not saying Peter Laviolette was not. I'm not saying the players weren't trying. Chris Drury made some good moves. Capo Caco, expiring contract, wasn't producing. You trade him straight up for Will Borgen and a pick. Will Borgen extended until 2030. Philip Hedl never really reached his ceiling here with the Rangers. I think everybody could say that, whether it was injuries, whether it was inconsistencies. You trade him for JT Miller. JT Miller, premium center in the league, changes the Rangers core for years to come. He's going to be assistant captain or captain next year. Chris Drury did a lot of moves this season and this offseason to help the Rangers be better set up, but at the same time, the front office and coaching is absolutely accountable for a few things, right? Plateauing core, not playing the youngsters because I mean, how infuriated were we when Good
Perot and
Perot.
Brennan Othman specifically.
Yep, exactly. Like how infuriated was all of Rangers fans for that. And there are just a few other ones too. Like the left side of the defensive core was not good. It was not built right, period. And that is a big thing to address this offseason. So I'm not gonna die on a sword or fall on a sword, whatever the saying is for Chris Drury. What I will say, and no one could argue it with us, he handled the press conference really well. And he's been the GM for a while. He's in the New York market. He knows how to handle it. But just by him coming out with the media listening to what he could say because he could talk about his job security, he could talk about possible coaches or offseason moves. For him to say the bottom line here is we're disappointed and everyone's accountable. I think every Ranger fan wants to hear that. I'm sorry, I just talked a lot.
No, completely agree. And let's go ahead and segue into what he mentioned specifically about the culture of the Rangers
Yeah,
organization. Because, that's a recent topic that's been across staffers and players that's really been floating around.
going back to November, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
He said, we're going to be looking at everything, whether it's the specific question you ask or other things that have come up along the way this year that we've already begun to look at during the year. Unfortunately, we do have extra time with not being in the playoffs to look at a lot of things this offseason. And again, try and make sure we're back in the playoffs next year. Now, there's a lot of culture issues that him and the media and fans could be talking about. There was unfortunately the recent Artemi Panarin alleged incident with a former Rangers staffer that they had at an away visit in a hotel. That kind of fueled that. But then most recently, Calvin DeHaan actually chose to open up about his frustrations regarding the fact that the veteran had been a healthy scratch for the past like 18 plus games. Absolutely insane number. And during the presser, Drewy actually also addressed that. And he said that he basically just said that he's always critical of himself and wanting to find ways to look better. So he kind of just basically blamed himself for that. He also said that he knew that Lavi was really big on communication and communication to his players throughout his 2 years there. I'm kind of going to disagree with that because if they were so big on communication, why did Calvin DeHaan choose to open up to the media about him saying, "Yeah, how I've been treated is fucked"? Like
Yeah.
if they really were so big on communication, I don't think Calvin would have chose to address the media in that way. And I don't think that if it to be honest, if Drury and Laviolette were so big on culture, like I don't think this Artemi news, whether it's true or false, or just, just with how sensitive it is and Calvin going to the media, I don't think those two things would have happened or would have gotten out to the media if there was this constant communication and not a culture problem. Jake, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, with the Artemi Panarin stuff that came out, we'll also mention this isn't the first issue
Yep.
with him. In 2021, he took a leave from New York after the Russian media accused him of a separate assault.
And
What
that
I will,
assault was, I believe, with like an 18-year-old Russian female.
yes, it
So it is
was.
kind of a pattern of behavior that
It,
we do have to acknowledge.
Yeah, we'll acknowledge it. The one thing I'll say there is it came out a few days after Panarin, who posted on social media. Again, hockey players are royalty there, and he posted a picture of Alexei Navalny, who's Putin's rival. We're not going to get into that. And then this happened, and the one thing we'll preface here, both Jenny and I, we hope all parties involved in these two situations are okay.
Exactly.
And with the Calvin DeHaan thing, and with it wasn't only Calvin DeHaan who was frustrated about playing time this year, right? It was Capo Caco, it was Zach Jones, it was other guys up and down the lineup. And that comes down to coaching because Peter Laviolette is the main guy who makes those lineup decisions. And You could fact check us on that all you want because Laviolette addresses the media before every game and he goes, I made this decision because. And most of the time it was wrong. What I will say about these Panarin and Dahan things, look, when a team's losing, there are always gonna be just, I don't want to call it distractions, but noise that comes
Yeah.
with it.
Noise
And
is a really good word for it.
right? And I think if the Rangers season didn't just conclude, I think it could have been a bigger deal down the line, especially if New York was a contender. One more thing I said about the Panarin thing, like when this happened and the Rangers were dealing with it, he put up a 120-point season. And
Mhm.
last year, the Rangers culture was just objectively better.
Yeah.
And this year, I think a big reason with the Rangers culture being bad was because a lot of the players thought they were being treated poorly. From Barclay Goodrow getting traded, from Jacob Trouba getting traded. Jacob Trouba built his life here. His wife's still doing her residency in New York. And these players, look, the NHL is a business, sports are a business. We could agree, but these guys are people. And
Exactly.
it clearly hurt them. And in terms of frustration for playing time, like Dahan said, Jones, Kako, that's coaching, that's Peter Laviolette. Especially because Dahan was brought in to be almost a stability marker. Like one of the best quotes of the season, in my opinion, is intro presser with the Rangers. He goes, like, my stats aren't sexy, but like I get the job done. And then they were 2-0-1 with him in the lineup. And he
Right.
was better than Ryan Lindgren, who he got traded for. And then they took him out of the lineup for Carson Soucy. Soucy wasn't as good. And so it's stuff like that that's frustrating. And then again, like I didn't find a huge deal with what Dahan said. He was going to say it eventually. Like he's just a transparent guy, has been throughout the league, and he's not trying to say anything negative. All these guys want to play, right? I know. I'm talking a lot. The last thing I'll say here is the Rangers culture. They're broken. They're broken from the core because of their plateauing core, because of the fact that two key leaders got traded, because their coach didn't make in-game adjustments. And if you watched any Ranger game this season, look how dejected they were on the bench. Just look at the way they were sitting. Like they barely talked to one another some of the time because of that. And they didn't fight. They quit on New York. Like they literally went against their saying. Oh, sorry.
Absolutely, Jake. No, 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 that's good. I think let's also not bury the lead here that when it comes to Artemi, a settlement agreement was reached between both parties with MSG Sports and Panarin himself and, former employee. So I think that's what matters. And with the Dahan situation and with those players who came out and disagreed with decisions, Laviollette's gone. So
Yeah.
with these two specific culture issues that we're discussing, there it seems like there have been steps towards making a resolvement. And I think that's what matters. One thing that I do want to like just piggyback to real quick is
Yeah.
the fact that Laviolette himself like was a former player. And not only just a former player, but was a former Rangers player. So like these these playing time issues that we're discussing, like this is something that he should have been able to handle better as a coach because he should have been able to relate to those changes and he should have been able to like have a better communication style with his players about that because he's able to relate. But
Yeah.
obviously, as we mentioned, he's not the head coach anymore. So I think what would be really fun is for you and I to each toss out one name of who we would like to see being considered for the role, the new
Yeah.
head coach role, and I will let you go first, Jake.
Ooh. If I had to pick someone just straight off the bat, I would say Joel Quenneville, assuming all the outside noise with him is done, which it looks like it is. And from what I'm hearing, he's looking for an opportunity and views New York as a very coveted spot. I mean, what NHL coach would view
Yep.
the New York Rangers as a coveted spot? You talk about Joel Quenneville, right? One of the winningest coaches in NHL history, Stanley Cups with the Blackhawks in 2010, 2013, and 2015. Stars Patrick Kane, Jonathan Taves, Duncan Keith, Brent Seabrook. This is a guy that could come in and shake up the culture. Now, Chris Drury, one more thing I'll say, I want to throw it to you. He did say that he's not opposed to bringing in a first-time head coach.
I saw that.
I just can't see that happening.
Yeah.
I think if Quenneville's an option, I think that's going to be it. And I'll throw it to you because I think what I was about to say, you're going to say it right now. So
Okay, I will say what I think he meant by like a first year head coach was that he meant if it's someone who he feels, even though they're a first year head coach, that they still have the qualifications to back it up
totally.
and if they interview well. Like, I don't think that was him saying, like, I'll consider a first year head coach just for. of it. Like that was
Oh
him
yeah, absolutely.
if it's a good candidate that's presented, which kind of piggybacks into my name. And yes, I'm gonna be the cliche because I am the female sports reporter here. I would really like to see Jessica Campbell's name thrown in the ring. I'm not saying like she deserves the position. I'm not saying she's gonna get it, but I would really like for her to be considered for the position. I think everyone knows that like what she's done with Seattle as an assistant coach, like she's had an instant impact there. Um, I don't think, however you feel about women in sports, like that's a fact. Like that, it can't be denied that she's had an instant impact. Her playmaking abilities and how her former involvement with women's hockey has translated so well onto
Yeah.
the men's hockey ice is phenomenal. It's really cool to watch. I would like to see her considered for the role. This is something that as I was scrolling X and or Twitter this morning, like there were other Rangers fans that were saying like first female head coach in history, bring her to New York, like let's do it. So I think it would be really nice just to see her be considered for the position and for the Rangers to consider making their mark in NHL history in that way.
Fully. And I think on that point, I mean, Jessica Campbell, there's only good things to say about her in anywhere she went. You see how people on the Kraken speak about her. And just to have her name in there. Now, I don't think it's likely that she'll be the next head coach behind the bench. I think New York's too big of a market. I think she'll get another opportunity in a smaller market team, but that's a different conversation. The Rangers are making a lot of changes behind the bench, right? Other guys are able to interview to come back. Jessica Campbell as an assistant coach could make sense too. And her and Joel Quenneville's old. And so you could almost like,
Yeah,
oh,
like I think that's
okay,
what a lot of people like are overlooking is that the NHL is becoming younger and younger. Like
right?
a lot of the players on the Rangers roster, Gabe Perreault, Brennan Othman, Matt Rempe, like they have at least 8+ players on their roster that are under the age of 25.
Yeah.
Like that those numbers don't lie. And I think that Jessica Campbell is an active assistant coach for Seattle right now, and she's also on the younger side. So I think it goes to show that you can have that hockey IQ, you can have that TOI while still being young to the game.
Oh, absolutely. And young coaches are successful in this league. And so are old ones too. I'm making a very blanketed statement, but I'm gonna throw it to the Washington Capitals, who
Okay.
brought in Spencer Carberry last year, who was the youngest coach in the league. And the Capitals ran into a few bumps in the 23-24 season. They were obviously swept by the Rangers, but Carberry was respected from day one. And not only by a team that was young, but by a team that has the best goal scorer of all time in Alex Ovechkin. And as the season went on, and especially this season, Capitals are first in the East. And they're not the favorite in the East, but they are a legitimate Stanley Cup contender. And so the Rangers shouldn't shy away from a younger coach just because experience and because of stats. And I think everything's open. And you brought up good points, right? The Rangers are going to get younger this offseason. They're going to lose Chris Kreider, who's the longest tenured player. You're looking at guys like Gabe Perreault, Brennan Othman, Matt Rempe, Will Cooley, Alexi Lafreniere. These are all guys under 25, combined with Artemi Panarin, who's 32. Mika Zibanejad's going to come back. Don't let people tell you he's not. His contract is way too hard to move. But they have some older guys too, like Vincent Trocheck, like JT Miller. But at the end of the day, they just got to find a coach that they all respect and don't shy away from a young coach. And I think you said that perfectly. The other name I was going to throw out there is John Tortorella, who had a stint with the Rangers. Now, I wouldn't be the biggest fan of that, but what I will say is he'll keep the guys accountable. But back to your point, I love Jessica Campbell, and I think she would be a great candidate. And I hope she gets an interview. Her getting an interview would be incredible.
Yeah,
Incredible.
I just want to see her get an interview. Like I want news to come out that she had an interview and like that's what I need to hear. But getting
Exactly.
back to other Rangers news that we have to cover. Jake, do you want to take Sam's last night in the booth?
Shot, score! It's a power play goal!
Yeah,
And
for sure. I'm glad we're doing this a few days after the game ended because when it was happening, I was crying, and I think a bunch of Ranger fans were. Echoing what I said in the past two episodes and what I've said in my entire time covering the Rangers, the New York Rangers are not the New York Rangers without Sam Rosen, right? His iconic calls, it's a power play goal, which the Rangers were wearing on their sweater during warm-ups. All the Rangers were wearing Rosen number 40 from this moment will last a lifetime because Sam Rosen has given Rangers moments that will last a lifetime and their fans moments that will last a lifetime. And I understand that this season didn't go the way that the Rangers want. I don't think a lot of people are going to forgive the New York Rangers for sending Sam Rosen out like this. But for the Rangers on Sam Rosen's final career game to one have a shutout with Igor Shesterkin and Sam Rosen to say it's a shutout for Igor Shesterkin. They didn't have a power play goal, but the Rangers did score power play goals in three straight games before that. And for New York and MSG to make Sam Rosen the number one star and hear the fans chant his name and see how much they care about Rosen. I don't care if you're a Devils fan, a Hurricanes fan, and you hate the Rangers to your core. I don't know how that doesn't make you warm and fuzzy inside because that is so awesome. And I thought the Rangers did it perfectly,
Yeah, just that and the fact of him getting first star of the game.
right?
Seeing like the players all wear like number 40 jerseys with the little like it's a power play goal patch on their jersey was truly just heartwarming to see. What did you think of the uniforms?
Yeah, I thought they should have done that for the majority of the season. Obviously, they weren't going to do that. You saw Matt Zuccarello do it when the Wild were in town a few weeks ago. Rangers won that game 5-4 in overtime on Vincent Trocheck's goal. You see the way Sam Rosen is treated not only by the Rangers but the league. I made a joke about his wine cellar last time we were on the podcast. He is so widely respected, and it's all so deserved. And whether you were a Ranger or not a Ranger, these players speak so well about him. And the thing that stood out to me the other night, too, was after the Rangers gave Sam Rosen the first star of the game, MSG went to Adam Fox. Adam Fox, not a very emotional guy. Like, he has emotion. He obviously cares. He's not the most outspoken guy. He's younger. But he grew up watching the Rangers. He grew up a Ranger fan, and now he's their best defenseman. It's not even close. You could see the emotion on these guys' faces because of their day-to-day interaction with the guy. And yeah, I just thought everything about that night was perfect for Sam Rosen to keep it short because the guy deserves every ounce of respect and he's going to get so much more respect for the rest of his life and he's going to have a good retirement because the guy's a legend.
I completely agree with everything you said. I think the announcement of the replacement also went over really well. Uh,
Yeah.
Transitioning into keeping up with the Rempies. I really want to just throw out this fact out there, or not fact, opinion. I think Matt Rempe was the most improved Rangers player this entire year. Like,
I oh, finish.
I just really feel that, like, for a player to go from an 8 game suspension and not posting any points at all to then going to recording his first multi-point game after they were eliminated from playoffs is a huge, huge improvement. And I think that not enough blue shirt fans talk about his growth, like in terms of his skill set. People always talk about the fact that he's an enforcer, like how big he is, whether he deserves to be in the league. But I think the Blue Line report is going to officially give Matt Rempe the stamp of like most improved.
Absolutely. I'll back you on that. The one other person I'd say is Will Cooley because Will Cooley set career highs in everything and he's a guy that is going to be around for a very long time and he's going to be a part of this new Rangers leadership core. And I think even before we started this, I've been saying since the start of the season, Matt Rempe has become a good NHLer. Yeah, he got suspended in the Dallas game, and since then, no suspensions, no dumb penalties, except when the refs, for some reason, put him out there. But 12 months ago, if we were having this conversation and you scrolled on Rangers Twitter, it was this guy's not an NHLer. Why is Peter Laviolette only playing him 4 minutes in a playoff game when you could put an extra skater in there? Matt Rempe is a solid NHLer. And he's not only a solid NHLer, he is going to be an above average bottom six player for the Rangers for years to come. He's young. He's starting to score more. Yeah, he only had 3 goals this season. He should have had a half trick in the season finale against Tampa Bay. He had the scoring chances. He's getting more mature. Remember, he's only 22, 23 years old.
22, yep.
Adam He's 22. Adam Edstrom's coming back too. The Rangers have this young bottom six, and Rempe's progression this season, he absolutely deserves most improved player. Look, I'm not saying Will Cooley shouldn't. My pick would probably be Will Cooley if we weren't a huge Rempe podcast. Those are the two though, because Matt Rempe has solidified his role in the NHL for years to come, and it's going to be with the Rangers. He's a restricted free agent, but the Rangers are going to bring him back because of how much he brings, not only off the ice, because everybody knew what he brought off the ice, from the laughs to the smiles to just the overall vibe he brings. He makes an impact on the ice, and it's a very good one. And so, Yeah, I mean, see him on opening night. He'll be there.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and end it with that. I know you took the intro, so I'll go ahead and take the
Yeah.
outro. Super big announcement for Blue Line Report listeners. We will be having Steven with Broadway Block on the next episode, so stay tuned for that. I think that episode will more be doing like a season rundown, like breaking down the season kind of analytically, statistically, and just giving our opinions on where we thought the season went. Hopefully by the time that's recorded, we'll have more insights on new potential head coach candidates. But yeah, this was episode 3 of the
Oh,
Blue Line.
wait. Last
What?
one. Before we leave, Stanley Cup prediction. Who's winning the Stanley Cup?
I mean, the only other team I cover is the Devils, and they're in. So like, even though they're gonna lose to the Hurricanes, like first it like in this series, I'm gonna go New Jersey Devils Stanley Cup just so I can keep covering them.
All right. Gosh. I am gonna go. I posted it earlier. I think the Dallas Stars make it.
You know
Your
what?
home
But
state
I
of Texas.
appreciate that take. I'm recording here in Texas, so
I
thank you.
think
Jake.
I think Dallas makes it, and then but I think they lose in the Stanley Cup to the Toronto Maple Leafs. I
Okay.
think Toronto finally brings it home. I just wanted to interrupt your ending so we could get predictions
No,
in.
much more statistic-based answer, and hopefully we'll have more insight on that in episode 4. So, as always, keep reading all things New York Rangers at bluelinestation.com and feel free to keep up with Jake and I across our socials. And bye for now, Rangers family.
See you guys.